Hello everyone, my name is Paul and welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone is having a fantastic day. I hope that you've gotten to enjoy your Sunday. And yeah, I hope that you're safe, that your family is safe, and of course that your friends are safe. And if not, I really do hope that everyone finds that safety and security soon. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and not all of it's all that great. But of course, we can change that. Being such an awesome community, you guys have made this a wonderful community to be a part of and to have really gotten together. And we are the news that can give back. And through you guys checking out that description in this video below, you guys can always check out a bunch of different organizations that we have gone through and we have vetted. And we made sure that, one, they are legitimate organizations, so you're not going to be finding any scams in there. And also that 80% or more of all of the funds that you give them, all of the proceeds, actually go to helping their programs. So they go directly to the people, 80% or more. Some of them go all the way up to like 99.6% all the way. Go directly to helping people, and that's globally. We don't just have stuff for Ukraine. Of course, you can support that. I know that's what a lot of people are here for, but there's other places in the world that also need our help. Tens of millions of people in other locations throughout the world that need our help, in fact. And that includes places like the Horn of Africa, places like Southeast Asia. We are currently also still looking for Brazil, South Africa. We're looking for some places in the Middle East if we can find a credible organization within those regions. Mexico. Anywhere that someone needs our help, we would like to be able to provide that help in some way, shape, or form, as long as it meets like our criteria, because we don't want the majority of the money given to go to our salaries and stuff. We want to actually help people with it, and also we want to make sure that no one's getting scammed out of their money. So please check out the description below. If you can't give a lot, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, just give us a like, a subscribe, let your friends know about us, because the more people that are here, more people can come enjoy the way that we deliver the news. But also, the more people that can help out, the more people that can pitch in, and overall, the more good we can do in the world. So, and I couldn't think of a better way to be doing this, to be honest. We're never going to be having super chats on this channel. It's all going towards fundraisers and foundations and helping people. So we're not for profit. I have a full-time job. Everyone here is volunteering their time. So yeah, we're not interested in making big bucks off this. But with that being said, there's a lot going on, so we're going to dive right into our special report here in Ukraine. And we have a couple things up here in Kyiv. So the first thing that we have is the Ukraine Security Service has a PSA. Now, this actually is the headline for the day, and that is that every Ukrainian can make a difference. The reason being is I've talked about before where social media has played a really big part in this war. Social media overall is a gold mine for intelligence. Believe it or not, those TikTok videos that you're seeing, while sure you can go, that doesn't seem very credible, every single one shows where Ukrainian troops are. And every single one shows where Russian troops are. So both sides are using them heavily in order to better aim their ordnance, to make adjustments as they're firing rockets, mortars, artillery, being able to figure out where Russian troops are going, where they're at, all of that. So, in fact, we saw that just a few days ago when in I want to say Kadivka, where the stadium was, and the Wagner troops actually took pretty nice artillery shelling, and reportedly most of them were killed. But thanks to Ukraine's security service, they have created a chat bot for the most popular social media message board out there in Europe, and that is Telegram. So that's where we see a lot of stuff. That's actually a lot of our sources, which we're up pretty much. We've actually expanded a bunch today, but so here they say, this is from their official Twitter, they said, together we will transmit data on the movement of enemy vehicles through the official chat bot. We want as many Ukrainians as possible to know about him and share information about the Russian troops. You can either scan the QR code, or you can add it to your chats. Here is the official Russian Warbot. So you can send a message here to it. Everything gets linked. So if there are any Ukrainians watching this channel that are still in Ukraine, please take a look at this. Please, help your government win a war. Like I said, every Ukrainian helps, and every Ukrainian can help just by doing this stuff. So pretty awesome, in fact. That's not the only cool thing that happened, and that is because the the president of the EU Commission here in Kyiv, she actually made her way to Kyiv yesterday, and she made several statements during her visit, and some of them I think it was worth a listen. So let's take a look.
Deeply touched and humbled by the strength and the resilience of the Ukrainian people. It is impressive to see how strong the Ukrainians are defending courageously their country in these very difficult conditions. There were many topics where we took stock, where we stand. First, I want to report on our joint work on the reconstruction. Together we are working on a reconstruction platform. What we want to do together with that platform is create a common direction of travel, have a very clear roadmap on how to deliver and how to orchestrate this reconstruction, full transparency, full accountability to help Ukraine rise from the ashes. We rebuild Ukraine, we make Ukraine attractive for investors, a conducive environment for the business sector, and of course, support Ukraine in pursuing its European path. Of course, Ukraine was already on a good track before the horrible and atrocious invasion of Russia. We see a country that is highly digitized. And we know that, as you've said, more needs to be done. For example, you have done a lot in strengthening the rule of law, but there still needs to be reforms implemented to fight corruption, for example. As you know, the Commission is currently preparing the recommendations, the so-called opinion, for the EU member states. The path is known. It is a merit-based path forward. It is a path where I must say I highly appreciate the enormous efforts and the determination of Ukraine in this process. We will and you will rebuild this beautiful country and modernize Ukraine. And I just want to say we stand by your side. Slava Ukraine.
So very important remarks there from the president of the EU Commission. That's Ursula von der Leyen, and pretty big remarks. And this is really a signal. This is really kind of a signal of the European Union overall is really has a vested interest in bringing Ukraine into the European Union, and a lot of people have talked about, well, there's Ukraine's not perfect. There's corruption. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong. But the big thing is that's a problem everywhere. Government is not perfect. No government is. No government style is. Especially democracies. And it's not about where Ukraine is right now. It's about how far Ukraine has come to be where it is right now. And Ukraine was a totally different country in 2014. Ukraine does still have a problem with, say, corruption, which is probably the biggest example anyone has ever given that's a proponent for, say, Russia. Ukraine has a lot of corruption. There's, of course, everyone likes to talk about the Azov battalions, which aren't what they used to be either. But in all reality, that has really changed. In fact, that was one of President Zelensky's platforms when he ran for the presidency, was to take out corruption. And we've seen a major decrease in corruption. While it's still there, it's very evident that a lot of changes have come, and more changes were on the way prior to the invasion, which put everything else on hold. So very, very good words from the EU, for the president of the EU Commission. And hopefully those opinions are going to be submitted to the EU here shortly. It's not the only thing. So the UK tech company Quintiq is actually going to approve the decision, and it has approved a decision in order to provide 10 Talon robots for demining within the territories of Ukraine. And specifically, the quote from Alexei Beloshativsky, who's the first deputy chief of the police Police Department of Ukraine. It says the British defense company Quinton Q has approved the decision to provide Ukraine with 10 Talon Sapper drones for demining in its territories. Now, what is the Talon Sapper drone? That is these little guys. So these things have been used by armed forces all over the place, all over the coalition. And I mean, these are the same ones that the United States uses for their EOD robots. This is the same one that the UK uses, that pretty much any Western nation uses in order to remotely, manipulate explosives or potential explosives. So, pretty cool little drone. Very handy, and it obviously keeps the EOD guys safe where otherwise they might not be. And that actually brings us up over into the area of the Donbass. So the Donbass there is a lot of fighting right now. And the first thing that we have is actually we got this geolocated. So this is the bridge here that was destroyed. This is the Severodonetsk-Lysychansk bridge. It was destroyed. We do not know by who. Some sides are saying it was Russia who destroyed this bridge. However, it's rather far behind Ukrainian lines for that to have been the case. Others are saying that Ukrainian troops destroyed the bridge. Either way, it brings an advantage and a disadvantage either way you look at it. The advantage for Russia is that this means that realistically that's one less major route that Ukrainian forces can use to move reinforcements to support their efforts in the Battle of Severodonetsk. So they can no longer move them across this bridge. They're going to have to use one of the other bridges, such as the one just a little bit further south here. So this is another one they would have to use, and then really there's no others until you go all the way down the Severodonetsk to the other side, and cross there. So that's kind of where you're at, and this is bringing them directly into the battle. This is really the shortest route to the battlefield. But in reversal, this also means that should Ukrainian forces no longer be able to hold out against Russian troops in Severodonetsk and the city is lost, then Russian forces would basically have to find a way to build a pontoon bridge across the Severodonetsk here in order to cross it. And we know that in some of these places that just isn't feasible. And if it is feasible, they normally come under extremely heavy fire when doing so. We've seen the Russians build multiple pontoon bridges. None of them have been very successful in their attempts to cross. They usually get pre-sighted and targeted by Ukrainian artillery. So this is an advantage and a disadvantage in a way, either way you look at it. But here we can see that bridge. It is destroyed. So at least one section is completely collapsed. It is no longer passable. And as we move into the actual Severodonetsk, we can see fierce fighting near the Azov Plant. We talked about the Azov Plant yesterday, and it was essentially completely destroyed. The Azov Plant was hit with Russian artillery that actually sparked an oil fire that burned down most of the building. It was housing roughly 800 people inside, about 600 employees, and about 200 other citizens of Severodonetsk. Very thick walls, very sturdy infrastructure there. But unfortunately, it just couldn't withstand the fire. Now, however, it wasn't completely destroyed from our understanding. Roughly 500 people are still believed to be inside the ruins of the plant. But the fighting has really intensified in that area. You can actually see that here. So as you can see, obviously a lot of large oil fires there in the distance. As you drop over here to Lysychansk again, we can see that Lysychansk is really under constant shelling. So this is a photo by Arismasinis, and this was reposted by the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this really just shows you. So this is like a little hole made by some shrapnel in a wall, and it really just shows you the destruction in Lysychansk. So this is the photo. Lysychansk is under essentially constant shelling now. Even though the Russian troops are nowhere near the city realistically, it's going to be essentially the next target. And once the battle began, the shelling began on the city. And it's been pretty merciless. This isn't, this isn't like strategic, they haven't dialed in a crossroads to prevent Ukrainian forces from moving through the crossroads or anything. This is Russian rockets and artillery landing in homes like this very same one. So pretty, it's a small, cataclysm of kind of what's going on there. But yes, this is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And once again, this photo is by Arismasinis. And as we move over here, we know that the Foreign Legion, specifically the American Foreign Legion, is operating in the area of Severodonetsk. We saw them when they arrived along with other parts of the Foreign Legion, including the Georgians. So we do know that this is, generally speaking, at least where a contingent of them are operating. And we're seeing pretty heavy combat footage coming out of here. We saw some very heavy combat footage from the Ukrainian troops yesterday. Today, we have some very intense combat footage from the American Foreign Legion, just what appears to be just outside the outskirts of the city, where we do know that battles are raging as they're preventing Russian forces from outmaneuvering and outflanking Ukrainian troops inside the city and becoming encircled. So take a look at this. It's pretty intense. This is going to give you an idea of pretty much what it's like all across the front. This is pretty much anywhere that Ukrainian troops are in direct contact. This is the infantryman's fight. This is not the big artillery that everyone is showing on social media. This is what the war is like.
Hold on, ground's fucked, fixing it. Come on! Hey, let's move back, I'm gonna cover you, okay? On 3, 1, 2, 3, move! Moving! Go! Reloading! I'm up! Are you good? Grenade out! I'm good! Fuck you, Ruski! Two mags left! No visual! No visual in tree line though, at least 4 or 5. I have that! How many mags you got? 2 left. 1 in the mag, 1 in no. Gracias. Switch for an empty. Don't want to lose it. Oh shit, Carl! Oh! Grenade! Grenade out! Let's move back to our guys. I'll cover you. Yeah. Move it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Move it over your heads. Stop. Okay, I won't stop. Take cover, please. I'm going. You good? Okay. Move it out! Hey, Silver! Silver! Yes, son! Fuck you! I'm covered in wire. What's that? My feet are covered in wire. Oh, don't move, don't move. Good, good. You're good, don't move. Move slowly, move slowly. Lift your right foot up. Not that fast. Okay, move your left foot up. Okay, you're clear, but be very careful. Careful. Do you have any guys on our left? I don't know. Okay, let's move farther back with the Ukrainians. Move to the right. To the right? Yes. Let's get behind this. Let's get behind this. I got you covered. Oh, that's all on video, bro. Holy shit! Contact! Fuck you, bitch. Yeah, we can fucking fire too. Where's everybody at?
So that is what it's like to be your average guy, your average rifleman in Ukraine right now. That is some pretty nitty gritty meat and potatoes. That's the war right there in a small video. Obviously, you know, some of it's obscured, right? Because he's, you know, messing with his weapon, or he's, you know, clearing a jam or whatever, or he's, you know, down in the dirt. But that's a firefight, and you hear him. That's just, you know, they're just doing 4 or 5 Russians in the tree line, as we was talking about. So when you're talking about these major engagements inside of places like Syria, DONETSK, or you're talking about those major engagements against, you know, large armored forces out here on the plains, that's, you know, a squad versus, you know, like a fire team of Russians about, right? Or a squad of Russians, not, you know, 100 Ukrainians versus, you know, a light armored infantry company or a light armored infantry platoon of Russian forces. Like, this is a very small engagement in a much wider war, and that kind of engagement is going on in every single, like, meter of this front line, and this thing's is like 300 miles long. So pretty intense combat footage, but yeah, that's pretty much where we're sitting with that. As we move over here into Horlivka, we can see that the Ukrainian field depot was reportedly shelled by the DNR, which is the separatist forces that are fighting on the side of Russia. We do not know about casualties or the extent of the damage. We just know that it has occurred. So let's take a look. So no audio with this, but apparently a storage area. You can see it's from iz.ru, so it's a Russian state-owned media site. You can see, obviously, a fire, they hit something, but heavy amounts of artillery usage on both sides. That's really the heavy weapons that Ukraine is wanting, is longer range, more precision guided munitions for their artillery and artillery weapon systems in general. So pretty extensive shelling on that part. So move over here, we can actually move over into a little bit of a safer part of Donetsk. And it's because the DNR troops are receiving training. So the DNR is conscripting men within their territories. Russia has it mobilized, and so conscription wouldn't go very well. We already see that the very idea isn't very popular, considering people keep going and torching enlistment facilities and conscripting areas. However, the separatists, you know, the separatist republics of the DNR and LNR are a completely different story. They have their own governments, so they can conscript, right? And that's bringing on more manpower. And the Russian armed forces are training these guys. But just take a look at this. This is they're receiving EOD training, so they're learning how to use demolitions equipment and demolitions techniques here in an occupied part of the Donetsk. And I just want to point out the equipment these guys have. Like, look at this. If this isn't the saddest lot of people getting ready to fight a war, I don't know what is. I've seen Syrian troops armed better than this. Okay, whatever. Getting back to the video.
Хлопчатобумажная оплетка и пластикатовая оболочка. Входят через пластикатовую оболочку. Под пластикатовой оболочкой находится хлопчатобумажная оплетка. Под ней пороховая сердцевина. В спичечного коробка от себя воспламеняйте огнепроводный шнур. Огонь! Огонь!
Just teaching them how to light fuses. But still, that's just... That doesn't even fit. Like, that vest doesn't even fit this guy. Like, this guy, if he gets shot in the stomach, he's going to die a very slow and painful death. That's all I'm saying. Like, this guy's protected, though his sides are completely screwed. But, like, some of these guys, like, their vests just don't fit. They don't fit, and I don't even think they have plates in. But, like, this guy over here, this really tall guy, like, it comes up to, like, right about where his rib cage is, you know, just above his stomach. You know, being shot in the stomach is probably one of the most slow and painful ways to die I could ever imagine. It's extremely painful, and it takes forever. It just takes forever. So it really doesn't protect anything vital. Like, you get shot in the stomach, you're done, unless you get medical help. And most of the hospitals are bombed out, so I don't think he would get a whole lot. Yes. So Riley commented, it doesn't even look like most of them have plates in their flak. Yeah, that's the truth. I don't think they do. I think it's just the Kevlar. I don't even think it's Kevlar because it's probably a similar thing for Russia, but Kevlar is an American thing. So jump down here into Mariupol, we get in a little bit of a short clip here, and this is of demining operations in Mariupol. So the DNR is still going through, and they're still demining a lot of things. Demining is just going through and clearing, you know, unexploded ordnance, landmines, set charges. So this stuff is absolutely littered all over the place in Mariupol, and trust me, it's not for the safety of the civilians. If they're demining something like the coasts, it's because it's for the safety of them and the ports. And it's just, you don't want your own guys dying to this stuff. We already know they really don't care about the civilian population here, but let's take a look. It's a short clip. You can see these are actually Russian amphibious vehicles. Right, and while the port of Mariupol isn't fully operational yet, they're bringing these things on here. One, they're good for just kind of roaming on the beach, but you're also going to want to be able to transport supplies onto the beach. You can see they're just blowing, you know, they're just blowing up ordnance and mines that were set here. Yeah, I think most of the coastline was mined at the outset of the war to prevent further amphibious landings. Like if you go over to Odessa, it's a terrible idea to go sunbathing on the beach. Absolutely terrible. There are landmines everywhere. But we can see that there. They're going through and they're trying to clear that up. And over here in Berdyansk, we can see that there's a rather large fire. We don't know what the cause of the fire is. This could be partisan activity or could just be the fact that there's a large fire. But there was a large fire over the city or in the city early this morning. And you can see the smoke kind of floating over the city. So let's take a look. Another day in Berdyansk. I'm surprised partisans didn't blow up the port again. And as we move here along the front, we can continue to see more Ukrainian activity. So Ukraine is dishing it back just as much as the Russians are trying to give it, if not more so. And we can see that Ukrainian Su-25s are back out and on the prowl. We can actually see them in support of ground forces here in eastern Ukraine. Sorry, this has copyright music, but take a look. So these are Ukrainian Su-25s. First of all, you can tell they have a completely different camo scheme from the Russian counterparts. But popping flares, laying low, that's kind of the usual thing right now. And that's not the only thing. We can see that these pilots, so this type of flight, when you're flying that low, actually has a name. So you have contour flight, which is where you're kind of above the trees. You're about 30 meters in the air or so. You're just kind of staying, consistent above the ground level. This is called nap of the earth flight. When you're flying this low, when you're in and amongst the trees and this kind of stuff. This is extremely low level flight. Whether you're doing it in fixed wing or rotor wing aircraft, rotor wing are usually going to do this a lot more, simply because they have a lot more maneuverability. And this is where they're trying to avoid being seen or being shot at, essentially by air defenses or even ground forces, because you can get low enough you can be behind the trees and they won't exactly know where you're at. But these guys get so low, it honestly looks like one crashes into the ground, he gets so low. I mean, just skimming, just barely skimming the top of the wheat fields here. So let's take a look. So once again, copyright music in this. I mean, absolutely low. Just look at him. It looks like he crashes over there. But these are Ukrainian Mi-8s in support of ground forces. There's the first one. It looks like he just crashes as he crests the ridge. I mean, they are low. That is 100%. That's very good nap of the earth flight. So pretty impressive flying skills on the part of the Ukrainians. As we move over here, this is near Polohui, and this is actually, we also got this one geolocated as well. This is the farm that the Russians seized this farm, and they're using it as a logistics forward base. So they're using it to, this is where their logistical vehicles are moving into here, their KAMAZ and their Urals, and they're bringing them in here. This is where they're restocking ammunition, food supplies, medical supplies, fuel, and they're bringing them to the front lines. And this actually was shelled by Ukrainian troops. So take a look. Once again, of course, copyright music. Someone always puts music over these, and I just really want to see the footage, man. But let's take a look at this. So there it is. You can see they mark out the guard posts and everything in here. Whoever put this together really, really wanted you to know what's going on here. But this is a Ukrainian drone. It's flying overhead. They're using this to mark targets. And they're using those for storage facilities is what this is. And here comes the fireworks. So, first round doesn't land on target. Fire and adjust. Second round lands just outside the compound. Alright, one more round in the adjust. Okay, third round in the adjust. Good. Fire for effect. And look at that. Fire for effect worked. So that is called walking onto your target. There's a couple of different ways you can target with artillery, but most of the time you're going to really do one or two things. You're either going to do a walk-on or you're going to do a bracket. And what each of those things is this was a walk-on where you have one round, it lands just outside the compound, right? If I can find it. So that round lands just outside the compound. Okay, or out way outside the compound. Okay, you make your adjustments. That second round lands just outside the guard post. Okay. Third round, it's going to land directly inside the compound, and that's when you do your fire for effect. And then the other way to do it is actually called bracketing. And this is a more common technique. And bracketing is where you put a round, okay, you call for fire, and a round lands, 200 meters to the south of whatever position you're shooting at, right? And so you're going to attempt to put a round, just north of their position, and then you're going to, hopefully get that next round. You're going to make your adjustments from the north part of the position, which should be closer, and then you're going to bring it in, and you're going to do the same thing left and right while you're doing it. That's called bracketing. So, you undershoot, overshoot in the target, left, right in the target. So that's kind of what it is, and you'll try and do it at the same time. So you might shoot down and left, then you're going to shoot up and right, and then you're going to hit the target. So those are the two real ways that you kind of, at a very basic, simple explanation, that's really the two ways to walk artillery onto target. You can do the same thing with mortars, or really any indirect fire you're using. That's really your methods. And in this instance, they're using a drone, but that's the same thing that JTACs are going to do when they're coordinating artillery. Same thing with JFOs, which is just pretty much just under a JTAC. And then you're also any infantry in the field, any forward observers, FOs, are going to be doing that same thing. That's going to be how they're calling in their artillery strikes. So there you go. You got to learn some very basic stuff about artillery. And that's actually it for inside of Ukraine. But we do have at least one bit outside of Ukraine, and that is up here in Russia. And here in the Belgorod Oblast, we're seeing more Iskander missiles. Nothing crazy. Of course, this guy's playing music, but you can see more Iskander missiles being fired from outside Belgorod. Not anything crazy. Belgorod is basically turned into a giant missile silo. They're firing pretty extensive amounts of Tochka-Us and Iskanders, especially from Belgorod, and most of these are actually going over here to Kharkiv, because Kharkiv is no longer in range of standard Russian artillery. So your BM-21s, your S2S1s, your 2S3s, your Mistas, that stuff just isn't in the range anymore. So you're looking at having to use much longer range ordnance that you could honestly just fire from within Russian territory. It's one of the reasons why Ukraine just keeps striking Belgorod, and why they've had to put so much anti-air systems in the area. But at this point, there's no tactical or strategic importance for doing this. It's really not doing anything but terrorizing the local populace. So there aren't really any military targets left in Kharkiv to hit. Maybe the regional military administration, but even then, I really don't think that they would be in a position where your Iskander is going to do a whole lot, other than maybe bury them in a bunker, and then they just have to wait to get dug out. But there's not really any military targets in Kharkiv at this point. They're all going to be up here along this front line, trying to continue to squeeze Russian forces, especially as you're pushing down towards the Izium area. But other than that, that's really it when it comes to the international news in Europe. But that actually brings us down here into the Middle East. And we have a couple of different developments going on. The war hasn't really started yet. Let me get that across. The war really hasn't started when it comes between Syria and Turkey. But we are starting to see a little bit more activity. It's been relatively quiet. There's a couple of pretty important developments, though. So nothing crazy, but this is over Azaz. This is a Turkish helicopter that was seen over Azaz in the Aleppo province. Sure. So it's just a Turkish helicopter in Syria. I mean, that's nothing crazy, but it shows you that, they're, at least out and about at this point. And on the opposite end of that, we also know that Syrian forces are still continuing to prepare for this. We can see the Syrian National Army over here in Manbij is actually bringing more reinforcements into the area in preparation for basically holding the line here against the Turkish forces. Manbij is going to be a pretty significant point of contention or of contest for these forces. This is right here along the M4 highway. It's a rather major city in this area. So we can take a look. Jump back over here. You can see they're bringing in more troops. They're bringing in, BMPs. They're bringing in some armor. That looks like it's a T-62. Yeah, that looks like a T-62. That one actually looks like it's a T-54 because I don't see a bore evacuator on this. So, but I could be wrong. I'm not trying to ID this too hard right now. But we're seeing them bring in more equipment. See them bringing in more troops. They're really preparing to hold a defensive here. But Manbij, the M4 highway is one of the more major highways inside of Syria, especially it is the main highway in northern Syria. This is what coalition forces use to evacuate out of Syria when the U.S. redeployed most of its forces out of Syria and into Iraq. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. Manbij, cutting off Manbij means you don't have any reinforcements from the Kurds and really would split them in two there on the Tigris. So, or sorry, not the Tigris, but the Euphrates, the Merv. And the Kurds are going to be up in this area, really. This northeastern part of Syria is Syrian Kurdistan. And then over here, you're going to see a lot more Syrian National Army forces. This is because the deconfliction line between Kurdish-controlled territories and Russian and Syrian National Army-controlled territories is the Euphrates River. Everything south of the Euphrates is considered Syrian National Army and Syrian National Army and Russian-controlled. North of that is Kurdish-backed forces, so the YPG, YPJ, PKK, and Western coalition forces, Poland, France, Britain, and the United States, obviously. So that's kind of why you're seeing the Syrian National Army here, but the Kurds are going to be over here. And it's a telltale sign that this is coming very shortly. We can see that Russian troops are actually withdrawing out of Tal Rifayat. So there's a lot of different groups near Tel Rifayat, being in the Aleppo area, but Russian forces are definitely in this area. They've been operating here for some time, and at this point, they're pulling out. And what this is really a signal of is the fact that the Turkish invasion is coming, and in order to prevent escalation between Russia and a NATO country, which could eventually lead to war considering the ongoing situation in Ukraine, in order to deconflict, the Russian forces and the Turks seem to have come to agreement where Russia is going to pull out of these areas where the offensive is apparently going to be conducted. And Tel Rifayat is actually one of the major points for the conflict. We see a lot of action and a lot of talk about Tel Rifayat. Its position, I don't know the strategic significance of it. I don't really know a lot of strategic information about a lot of stuff. I was more taught at the tactical level. But it is along the 214, which is going to be a major highway into Aleppo. And basically, this is going to control a majority of the highways going southward into Aleppo. So that's going to control the flow of anyone that is attempting to leave out of the excursion zone or out of the security zone, quote unquote, and also prevent reinforcements from reinforcing this northern territories, unless you're taking the 215 further north. So that's kind of what the situation there is, but we can take a look. So someone said that I believe it, William Young said it, I don't think it's Turkey versus Syria. I think it's Turkey just wants to drive the Kurds out of Syria. Yeah, actually, but it's a consequence. As a consequence, it's Turkey versus Syria. Turkey's not invited to the party, to say the least. Turkey already created a 30-kilometer excursion zone in 2019 and 2020 during my second deployment, and that was when the U.S. forces had to withdraw in order to prevent two NATO nations from fighting each other. It's been a serious point of contention. We actually saw the Kurds and the Syrian National Army fight the Turkish forces then, and they lost. That 30-kilometer zone was established. But it is basically an assault on just the Kurds. The Kurds are amazing people. I served alongside the Kurds during my first deployment. When I was in Syria, I was in northeastern Syria in the Deir ez-Zor and Al-Shaddadi provinces, and that was really the where a lot of the Kurdish forces, the YPG and YPJ, were at. I had made friends with a lot of them. I drank chai with them. I have patches from them that they had given me. Obviously we had to be escorted by the Kurds whenever we went out. We worked whenever we were on convoys. There's always a Kurdish vehicle leading the convoy as a guide. Very, very closely worked with them, lived with them. We had Kurds inside of our compound. One of my posts was on top of a Kurdish building, actually on top of their little barracks. And so, I got to know them really well. Very, very cool people, especially the SDF. But Turkey hates the Kurds. Turkey sees the Kurds as a terrorist organization, like their whole ethnicity, essentially. And this has brought on questions of Turkey, one, its stature within NATO, because on top of this, you also have the Armenian genocide over 100 years ago. And Turkey is basically oppressing an entire people. Turkey has all but wiped out essentially any Kurdish resistance and the majority of the ethnic Kurds inside of their own country. They continue to fight the PKK within their own country. And I'm not going to say the PKK is definitely, a saint in that. The PKK has conducted some rather terroristy things inside of Turkey. But that's because the PKK is a Kurdish Marxist group. Whereas the majority of the Kurds aren't, especially within Syria. A lot of them are very democratic, or at least they're democratic socialists. So that's kind of the situation with them. And it's another question that's been brought up is the possibility of ethnic cleansing. And this is also not just due to what Turkey has done in the past and is looking to do, but is also based on the rhetoric of the Turks. They basically want to kick Kurds out of that 60-kilometer region, and they want to bring in natural-born Ottoman Turks. So this brings up the question of ethnic cleansing, which is I would say a step below genocide. And this is really kind of what we're seeing, and this is kind of where it's leading to. It really depends on how Turkey conducts their operations, and if they do indeed kick all Kurds, the ethnic Kurds, out of this area. But that is kind of what at least it's looking like. And that brings up its stature in a lot of different organizations. That opens up a lot of different things. Erdogan has already made some references to prior genocides when talking about references with Greece and conflicts over the Aegean Sea. And to say the least, Turkey is really the bastard child of all of NATO, and they are really working with the Russians in this operation. We've seen them doing joint patrols. So we've seen them even have the possibility of accepting stolen grain from Crimea. Turkey is not at all my favorite country in the world for multiple reasons. And that's just kind of my personal opinion on it. But there's also, at least from being there and, knowing the people there and knowing what Turkey is doing, it's not a good situation, to say the least. It's not a situation that I would expect out of a Western power. So that's my personal take on that. But I digress. So we're actually going to jump over here into Deir ez-Zor province, where I was just talking about. And a Kurdish commander was actually killed near Deir ez-Zor by the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or also known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. So they killed him, they shot him, and he was the commander of the security forces and the Kurdish formations. When they're talking about Kurdish formations, they're just talking about Kurdish forces in general. This area is controlled by the SDF, so the Syrian Democratic Forces. It's mostly comprised of the YPK, which breaks down to the YPG and YPJ. YPG is guys, YPJ is girls. That's all you really need to know. And then they have a bunch of other Arab affiliates. They actually have former ISIS members in there. They're called the Black Patches. They're very scary individuals to ever talk to. And then, so anyway, he was killed in the Busir region. Busir is a very small village within the Deir ez-Zor province. In fact, it's not even listed on the map. Most of them aren't. At least not that I could find. And I believe it's also south of the river, so I never went that far south to know. But that's just that's currently the situation. Unfortunately, another Kurdish commander killed. Jump over here into Afghanistan. There's a couple of different things happening here. So first thing, more intra-fighting here in Meymana. Meymana is in the Faryab province of Afghanistan, right here near the Uzbekistan border. And I believe this is also Turkmenistan. Yeah, Turkmenistan. And this is between Uzbek Taliban and really the Pashtun. So the Pashtun got into a scrap with the Taliban earlier yesterday when they believed some of the Taliban had ISIS affiliations. Keep in mind, this is the Uzbek Taliban who is in support of the Afghani Taliban. They're not the same group. They just have similar goals. And they're basically helping each other. But there's also deviances in ideology, which is where that opens the possibility that some of the Uzbek Taliban certainly could be working with the Islamic State for their own goals and their own ends. And so basically the subordinates of the chief Uzbek Taliban commander Qari Salahuddin Ayubi attacked the Pashtun security forces this morning, and 3 Pashtun and 1 of the Taliban were killed. The cause of the incident has not been specified. So this could be a retaliatory attack, or this could be for other reasons, but we just don't know. However, a UN envoy did arrive in Kabul today. So a UN Special Representative for Afghanistan, Deborah Lyon, arrived in Kabul today to meet with the Taliban Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani. And the main topic of the conversation was the fight against terrorism, drug trafficking, as well as humanitarian issues. So the war in Afghanistan is over, and we as people need to move on with that. I am not happy about the situation, considering I had friends that went to Afghanistan. I knew people that were killed in Afghanistan. Not any of my people that I was with, but unfortunately others, growing up, people that I knew that went to Afghanistan when the war was really raging. And drug trafficking is a big thing in Afghanistan. That was one of the things that made the hunt for Osama bin Laden so hard, is because, well, it's a really rich compound, so it's either bin Laden or a drug trafficker. And there's a lot of humanitarian issues within the country. I mean, the price of bread or flour has gone up 47%. In I think the last year or so, and this is really so everyone's trying to build relations now. They're trying to really stop that humanitarian crisis. They're trying to get Afghanistan onto its feet, and they're really trying. There's no other choice. The Taliban have control. It's an Islamic emirate of Afghanistan, and so the world's trying to move on, and as much as I don't like it, I understand why, because we have to. There's no other choice, and there's millions of people in Afghanistan that could really benefit from working with them. So that's kind of the situation, as awful as it may be. But there she is. She has arrived. That is currently the main talk, or the main topics of the conversation right now. But that is currently the situation. And as we move over here, in Asadabad and Faizabad, which is, I believe, just across the border, in Pakistan, these two Taliban cars were blown up. It was a terror attack. It probably could have been the Islamic State. That's a possibility. They are pretty heavily embattled with the Taliban within these regions. But and as much as we know is that, at least in Asadabad, that we know, which is the capital of the Kunar province, 3 of the Taliban were killed and when their truck was blown up, and 2 more were injured. Nobody has officially claimed the attack, however, so it could be any number of groups, but but a lot of things point to the Islamic State. And while we do talk a lot about Islamic extremism, I have to put a caveat in here, and that is to say something that needs to be very clear, and this should ring true all over the globe. Muslims are not the problem. There's no problem with being a Muslim. There's nothing wrong with being a Muslim. There's no problem with having belief in Islam. Everyone who believes in that is totally okay. The problem is with extremists. And the reason I say that is because what we're getting ready to talk about next, is absolutely infuriating. Because I understand resentments for things like 9/11. I understand resentments for terror attacks worldwide. I understand resentments because of things like the Islamic State and watching journalists and Westerners and people from all over the world being beheaded by Islamic extremists. That doesn't mean you hate people just based on who they believe in. And that is what we see in India. Police are detaining Muslims who are in protests against insults that are constantly being made by the Hindu majority populace. Muslims are the minority within India. And that religious tension is one of the reasons that there's a lot of tension between India and Pakistan, aside from the Jammu and Kashmir. I would even, to some extent say that if it was the 20th century still, Pakistan and India may have gone to war with each other over just religion. But the Muslim minority has been protesting because there's been a lot of oppression by Indians, and the Indian police at this point are not only just detaining them, but they're pretty openly just beating them in the streets at these protests. They're just beating them and detaining them. And they're not even being really able to fight back. They're using small arms against them. They're actually just shooting them in some cases. And they're demolishing their homes when they're detained. This is systematic oppression of a people based on their religion. And if you don't believe me by saying that, we have videos to show you. A little bit of viewer discussion here. At least the researcher who found this a little bit hard to watch. There's not a whole lot of there's not like any gore or anything, but just to watch this kind of stuff is not something that a lot of people may enjoy, but I think it's important for people to see. So let's take a look.
यहाँ पर देख सकते हैं लाठीचार्ज हो गया, पुलिस के द्वारा लाठीचार्ज किया गया। यहाँ पर भीड़ को नियंत्रित करने के लिए पूरी तरह लाठीचार्ज कर दिया गया है पुलिस की तरफ से। कोतवाली इंस्पेक्टर भी इस समय मौजूद है। ये देखिए,
You're just taking nice big wooden sticks and they're just beating protesters while they're laying on the ground. In groups. And then when it comes to demolishing their homes after they're detained, here's a video of that too. You cannot tell me that this is not systematic. And you cannot tell me, after so much we have talked about it, that this is not based on religious lines. I don't care who you are, in what country. I don't care who you believe in. Nobody deserves to be oppressed for any reason. And that's coming from someone who's been shot at by Islamic extremists and probably has a lot of reasons to hate Muslims. And I don't. I don't. Think about that. And with that, we're going to jump down here into Africa, where we do see some extremism here. The Islamic State is expanding in the Cabo Delgado province of Mozambique. The Islamic State fighters have expanded all the way down into Churi, which is down here in the southern part of the country, of this region of the country. And they've burned 70 houses, Christians, killing at least 2, and residents are currently fleeing en masse to Pemba, the provincial capital. So they continue to be attacked by Islamic extremists, and the Islamic State, unfortunately, has a pretty good control within Mozambique. They have a rather large force in Mozambique, and they have a rather large supply to continue their assault on the people within Mozambique. But, of course, there's a statement from the Islamic State. You can see this is violence. All the acts of violence linked to the Islamic State in inside of Mozambique, and specifically Cabo Delgado. Each one of those dots represents an act of violence, and each of these is a number of, each color is a number of displaced people as a result. Some of these, way to Pemba, 100,000 plus people. Most regions are just under 100,000. Some regions are so much in the control of the Islamic State they don't even have access to the information. And as we move up here, not like the Democratic Republic doesn't have enough problems here along the border with Rwanda, as we have seen in the North Kivu province. But apparently there's problems between the two countries now. So tensions heat up between these two countries. There's relations between the Democratic Republic of the Congo, also known as the DRC, and Rwanda have officially stalled. The DRC has accused Rwanda of collaborating with certain rebel groups. This is the M23 rebels. And they pose a threat, who apparently pose a threat to the Congolese. And so at this point, they are officially transferring local military equipment, including tanks, to the borders between the two countries. So tensions are heating up in this region. Take a look.
Tena kuna tunalala ça sent très très mauvais à Bunagana ce matin. Très mauvais.
So that's currently the situation there in the DRC and Rwanda. But finally, we get to the good news. We have at least 3 different bits of good news here today. So we're actually going to jump up here into Hungary first, where a Viking coin was found here in Vardom, Hungary. So metal detectorist Zoltán Zikos discovered a small silver coin at an archaeological site on the outskirts of the village of Vardom. And it was marked with the name of a famous Viking king. However, it was not unearthed in Scandinavia, but in southern Hungary. It's almost 1,000, where it was lost almost 1,000 years ago. So it holds the remains of a medieval settlement here, and it was a very important trading town within the region. So they've made hundreds of finds within here, but this is the first time a Scandinavian coin has ever been found in Hungary. It's a very early Norwegian coin denominated as a penning, but it is not especially valuable at the time, even though it was made from silver. It was worth around the equivalent of about $20 in today's money. So it was in poor condition, but it's recognizable as a Norwegian penning minted somewhere between 1046 and 1066 for King Harald Sigurdsson III, also known as Harald Hardrada. Further research could clarify a little bit more regarding this, but pretty cool. So obviously it's not in great condition. It's been in the ground for almost 1,000 years, but that is a penning. So we can at least clearly tell what it was, and that is the Viking king that they are talking about. So pretty cool. We also found this one on Live Science, so go check it out if you want to learn some more. As we jump up here into the Netherlands, a Dutch company has released a new electric car. So this one is EU approved, it's production ready, and it's called the Lightyear Zero. So it's a small electric car. It has built-in solar panels measuring about 5 square meters. And the panels cannot fully charge the battery, but it will allow you to recharge the electric car every few months with a daily mileage of up to 70 kilometers. So they'll start giving the first deliveries here in November. Let's take a look at this. Pretty cool. Pretty cool concept for a vehicle. This is really especially within Europe, but worldwide, climate change is becoming an even more pressing issue as we're seeing very extreme weather changes. And so everyone's trying to find a new way to do that, and this is one way. This is one way to do it, is changing up what you drive. And finally, over here in Sinhal province, we can see that scientists invented a brain-computer interface, or a BCI. So it basically provides a connection between the brain and devices, and the BCI can decipher a person's intentions and send the command to the device wirelessly. So it was presented as an electromagnetic metasurface. So the brain computer can only translate the brain operator's brain signals into commands, but even carry out wireless mental connection between two operators. So basically, you can think between two of you, essentially. So the display needs to be in front of the person to display the commands, but it simply looks for the desired command, and the system understands this, and it works. So it's a prototype at this point. You can send text through it. It's decoded from EEG signal, and the second operator of the system, or the second operator system, receives the signal and it presents the result on the display. The average input time for each character is about 5 seconds. So pretty interesting. Kind of scary in some ways, but pretty interesting. I mean, this is kind of cool. Like, I can use my brain to just mess with technology now. So basically, they hook you up, and you can decode, and it decodes what you're thinking, and it sends it through its own electronic processes, and eventually it spits out whatever result. So that's pretty cool. I mean, kind of terrifying, especially when coming from the Chinese, who are an all-observant state and would probably love to know what their people are thinking. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool concept. It's a pretty cool prototype. I mean, that while it doesn't have a lot of use now, especially considering I can type a lot faster than a character every 5 seconds, everything changes with time, so it's pretty cool. So we'll have to see how that gets utilized for good or for evil. We'll have to see either way. But other than that, that's actually all the news today. That's everything going on in the world. Some very disappointing things especially coming out of like India, which India is supposed to be an up-and-coming nation, and they're having these kind of challenges. It's really a disappointment, especially for a country that is supposed to be a Western nation. Troubling things going on regarding the Islamic State, Rwanda, who just had a genocide less than like 30 years ago, is currently looks like they're getting ready to go to war with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Not that either of them need it, considering the fact the Islamic State is like roaches everywhere, especially in North Kivu. The war hasn't officially started in Syria, which is a good thing, I guess, but the violence still continues there regardless, especially as the Islamic State proves. And, of course, the war in Ukraine is just terrible. It's just an absolute tragedy, no matter how you want to look at it. But, luckily, we can help with a lot of these things. Maybe not the wars, but we can help with the fact that we can do some stuff to help people worldwide, especially in places like Africa. And it's because your guys are an awesome community. And we continue to be a growing, awesome community with this. You guys enjoy the news, at least I hope so. But what we strive to do is to help people. So we're never doing super chats on this channel like I talked about early on. We're never going to be doing that because we really don't need the money. We really just want to help people and present the news in a different way. And so check out the description below because we have a ton of different links down there for different fundraisers and foundations. We're always looking for more. We have a new one that someone presented to us last night. It's dealing with animals actually in Ukraine. And who doesn't love animals? That's kind of a forgotten part when it comes to the crisis in Ukraine. Is everyone basically had to leave their pets behind. And so luckily we'll be able to take a look at that. We're currently trying to get through the vetting process. Same thing with Razam. I know that Razam has been talked about pretty widely, but unfortunately there's just not a lot of information on it. It makes it difficult for our vetting purposes, and we want to be equal and fair to all of this. So please give us more. We're always looking for more, and with the ones down there, if you can't give a lot, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, trust me, I understand, but give us a like and subscribe. It's free if you do that, but it helps us a ton. You guys have already shown us a ton of support, and we couldn't thank you enough, and we really appreciate the continued support with this. So please like and subscribe, tell your friends about us. Let's continue to grow this thing. Let's continue to do amazing things in the world and physically actually feed starving children in Africa, physically help people in Ukraine. Let's physically do this stuff. And the only way to do that is with even more people here. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us tonight. I really hope that you guys enjoy the news. I hope that you, your family, and your friends remain safe. I hope that that you guys continue to, enjoy what we're doing and continue to try and find that safety and security going forward. Please remember that tomorrow we will not be streaming. We take Mondays off. I'll probably still be active on our Discord as well as the rest of the community. But we will not be streaming tomorrow. We're human beings, not machines. We're not the big 24-hour news channel. We just can't do that all the time. So we do take Mondays off here, so no stream tomorrow. But we will see you again on Tuesday for a 48-hour review of what happened throughout the world. But thank you for joining us. My name is Paul from the New News, and I hope to see you again on Tuesday. Have a great night, everyone. Bye now.